Because we let sport define us. And when you're at a really high level of sport, you understand what it takes to be great. And when you leave that sport, business is not linear, right? Business is not just wins and losses. It has way more nuance to it. And when you think about it, you spend your whole life, for me as an offensive lineman, mastering how to be an offensive lineman. You have so many intangibles, right, that are sitting over here, but my skills are putting a hand on the ground, right, and blocking and being, right, understanding how offense and defense works together, etc. That does not translate into business, but you are an incredibly high performer. You have expectations of yourself that are unlike almost anybody else, and you've achieved more than most other people at that level. You jump into business, you don't have any of the skills. You have all the crazy traits that make people amazing, but those skills are super hard, and it's really hard. You almost have to start over, and it's like, who am I? What am I? Hey, I'm Jeff Byers, CEO and co-founder of Momentous. I'm on Behind the Brand with Brian Elliott.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the show. Jeff, thanks for having us to your world headquarters.
Yeah, global headquarters in transition.
Yeah, well, it's a top secret location. We won't give it away, but it's a fantastic spot. It's a pleasure to be here. I usually ask my guests, how did you get this job?
That is a great question. I got this job out of a desire to build something, right? As the founder of the business, I'm really passionate about how do we continue to build and create a difference in the world. And my life as an ex-professional athlete, I saw this huge gap around optimization and performance, and this opportunity to fill that gap with what is now Momentous. And so I got this job just out of passion, experience in it, and really this endless curiosity to health, wellness, and performance.
I want to unpack all that. If you've been listening to any of these other episodes or watched prior pieces, you know that I've been on my own personal health and wellness journey. Basically had to take responsibility for myself. I love doctors and it's great to have science, but ultimately it had to start with me being accountable. So I want to hear all that, but I also want to go back in the chronology a little bit to young Jeff. There's two buckets, let's say, of comments that I get a lot. One is from younger people coming right out of school, trying to find their path. Like, what should I do? where should I be headed? How should I start? How do I find what I'm good at or my passion? And then there's another bucket of people, let's say that they're mid-career, mid-life, and they're hitting the reset button. Like they went to law school and they're just not happy. Or they've been a successful, finance person, but it's like, this is not lighting them up. And so they're looking to reinvent themselves. So what was young Jeff thinking about? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I wanted to be a professional athlete, like most young people in the world, and had that dream and actually got to live it. But I really loved business. I grew up around business in my family, but in very Fortune 50 companies, right? Very different business than I'm in. And I thought, hey, I wanted to be in strategy and kind of big business. And I realized post my NFL career, one of the things I loved so much about being a pro athlete was this constant amount of stress, right? The accountability is so high. Like there's more accountability in that. And there's just this level of performance. Like you got to show up and perform every day. Yeah. And you got to go out and play the game. Yeah. And that's what I found in entrepreneurship.
What did your parents do?
My dad was an operating president of one of the largest beef companies in the world. Yeah. And so, worked at Hormel, Conagra. Anyway, so yeah, worked a lot of places.
And did your mom work?
Mom was a stay-at-home mom, did a ton of volunteering, worked a bunch at the school, and other things.
So she worked the hardest. But
She
didn't get
worked the
paid.
hardest job and to deal with me and my siblings for sure.
And how many siblings do you
I
have?
have a older sister, younger brother. Both went to law school. Neither one of them are practicing lawyers. To your went to law school and trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. I ran track, played football, and played basketball. And then before high school, I did everything. I wrestled, I swam, and my thought on that is, I have a ton of energy, and my parents' goal in life was just make Jeff as tired as possible. And that's what we did. But I skied a bunch growing up. Grew up in Colorado, and obviously now we're based in Park City. Ski a ton. I love snow sports. I love hiking. I love biking, and did a lot of that kind of up until middle of high school, and then saw the path to football, and I'd say put some of that stuff on the shelf to when I got done.
So that's interesting. Deion Sanders is in the news a lot. Another sort of triple threat. He ran track, football, baseball. How did you choose football? Tell me that story.
Putting me in the same boat as Deion is a stretch.
I'm just saying that, so I'll put myself in there for context so that it maybe evens the boat out. Because I was a 3-sport athlete as well. I played varsity sports. I played football, believe it or not, baseball, and I played soccer. I also wrestled. But it's like, at some point, I became better at one. How did you figure out what to do?
Yeah, I was just 6'4", 260 in high school.
Yeah.
Right? And that is very conducive for being a football player. Like I would say my genetic mutant skills center around football. I love basketball. Like basketball was my sport. I grew up kind of in the Midwest, outside of Chicago. In the 90s, there's, Michael Jordan and the Bulls, the 90s Bulls was my team, and I loved basketball. Cool. But I was not my finesse is not. I am a bull in a china cabinet. Gotcha. And I love basketball, but I fouled out of all my games, and
So you're the havoc maker.
I'm the havoc maker.
Yeah.
That was 100% me. And I love the sport. I love football too, but it just became really clear, like football to me, like aligned everything in terms of what I loved and what my body was really gifted at.
Yeah. And you played a majority of your career at Carolina?
In Carolina,
yeah. What offensive or defense?
Offensive line.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you were clearing the path.
Yeah, exactly. So I was a great journeyman, which basically means you're not a starter on week one, but you're kind of the next person up. And so I ended up starting a handful of games and played in a bunch more throughout my career, and walked away on my own terms because to me, there's always life after ball. And I, not always, but I had, some injuries in college early on that really put into perspective on what I wanted to be in the future. So you asked me what I wanted to be. Yeah, I wanted to be a professional athlete, and I wanted to be a businessman, right? And went to USC. I was one of the top recruited high school athletes, and started as a true freshman on national championship team, and then missed my next 2 seasons. And it was a really big epiphany on what am I here for? What do I want to be? Does football, the sport define me, or do I define me? And sport is a part of that. And I was really young to have that awakening, but basically was told I was never going to play football again when I was 19.
Oh, wow.
Or never play at the same level. And that got me accelerated into an MBA program. And so when I played in the NFL, I actually had my undergrad and MBA. And that was a big thing of I always knew there was something after. Yeah. I didn't know it was entrepreneurship until about 1.5 years after, right? And I jumped into finance and was doing some wealth management, joined a family office, did some growth investing, and I just realized that was not filling this void for me.
Yeah. What's your advice to other entrepreneurs? Is having a plan B the best strategy? Because I'll play the other side of the coin. Some will say, if you have a plan B, then you're not really all in, that all in statement. But it sounded like, your injury gave you some early perspective, at least a vantage point that other people may not have had. And that was maybe a light bulb moment. But what's your general advice about plan A, plan B?
I think there's always something that's next, right? And we're all naive to think if there's not something next. I think the challenge with sport is it's very terminal, right? Whereas you play and then you don't play. And there's nothing I guess you could go into coaching or front office.
Yeah, there's an expiration date.
There is an expiration date.
Yeah.
In business, what I think is what's next is the pivot, right? It's the resiliency, because you can always expand beyond, and right, Momentous is not what we started, right? And it's taken a very different approach, and you always have to think about what's next in business. And as an entrepreneur, you have to be taking a lot of shots, digging a lot of pilot holes, right? Looking for gold, and you never know which one might pan out. And sometimes you got to pack up your stuff and walk to the next mountain. And that's okay, but you have to be very resilient. But there's always the plan, right? Like when I say, what is the plan? Plan A versus plan B, right? I don't know if I have two different plans. I think I have different tactics, right? And how you play the game. What I want, right? What I'm really passionate about is building, running a company in the high performance space, really centered around making a difference, having a mission first, and making an impact in the world, and being able to do that. And then the tactics are selling supplements or doing consulting work or whatever that may be. And so those tactics can change, but my plan A and B is, right, sitting in a role similar to mine.
So you see an opportunity to pivot into business. You had a successful career, but you had a backup plan. Where did that take you?
Yeah, so post football, right? It's super interesting because people really have a hard time transitioning out of sport at any level. And I just had a long-standing job offer, but I jumped into finance. I was working for, call it a small wealth manager.
Why do you think people have a hard time transitioning?
Because we let sport define us. And when you're at a really high level of sport, you understand what it takes to be great. And when you leave that sport, business is not linear, right? Business is not just wins and losses. It has way more nuance to it. And when you think about it, you spend your whole life, for me as an offensive lineman, mastering how to be an offensive lineman. You have so many intangibles, right, that are sitting over here, but my skills are putting a hand on the ground, right, and blocking and being, right, understanding how offense and defense works together, etc. That does not translate into business, but you are an incredibly high performer. You have expectations of yourself that are unlike almost anybody else, and you've achieved more than most other people at that level. You jump into business, you don't have any of the skills. You have all the crazy traits that make people amazing, but those skills are super hard, and it's really hard. You almost have to start over, and it's like, who am I? What am I? And sport, right? It's very ritualistic. You understand, you wake up, you train, you do this, you do that, right? And to make that shift out, you kind of you have this gap in you. So anyways, I think it's a really hard transition. Yeah. It's the same for the military, right? You see it in the military as well, or in other, I would say, elite professions like acting, musicians. It's just hard to make that transition because you're so good at something, whereas like no different than amazing executives and CEOs, they've learned skills and practiced and made those better and better and better, and they continue to rise up and rise up. No different than in sport.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I didn't really think about it. Kind of crystallized just as you were saying it, that you're hyper focused on that one skill set. You're not throwing the ball to any receivers.
Yeah.
You're not kicking field goals. You got a hand on the ground and you're bulldozing your way forward, and that's your role because you've got 10 other players, 11 other players, right, helping you out, and they're all doing their job. And when you jump into a company, it's a similar format, I guess. You know, you have people who are good at finance, and you have the people who are good at sales, and you got marketing. But it's like when you're starting something new, oftentimes you got to do the whole role,
exactly,
all the roles.
100%. And I don't know, thinking about like a company like a football team, right? You have the people on the field. Those are people doing the tactics, right? Those are your lower level people. They're not calling the plays. As an offensive lineman, I wasn't thinking 4 plays in advance, right? I was like, okay, this was a play called. What are the odds? What's the probability of what's going to happen on the defense? And you go execute that play, right? Then you take a step back and say, okay, then you have your position coaches that are sitting on the sidelines, right? They're coaching, right, play to play, series to series, but they're not thinking about what's next or the future plays. Yeah. Those are your like directors and your senior directors in a business. Like they're doing, they're coaching the tactics, like managing the tactics. Then you have the offensive coordinators who sit in the press box that's thinking multiple plays out, multiple series out. Those are your VPs.
And they have a bigger
they can see the whole
vision,
field. They're not on the field, right?
Yeah.
But you learn these skills throughout it, right? And there's business acumen, right? Just like there's football acumen. I couldn't put anybody in and say like, be great at being an offensive lineman. It's going to take a ton of time to do that. No different than business, and you learn and you fail. And one of the great things about being an entrepreneur is you learn so fast, right? Whereas if I got thrown into a Procter and Gamble, you just you progress, right? Yeah. You just progress up and progress up. And what you get to do here is you get to skip a ton of steps, right? And you get to do that based upon just willpower, resiliency, drive, right? Bias towards action, all of these incredible things.
Yeah.
And because of that also, like you become a master at no tactic as an entrepreneur. You become really good at doing a lot, and then you keep rising up and really where the role ultimately shifts is you go from executing to being visionary. And really living out the original mission. But early on, it's just like, what's going to stick? Anyways.
Yeah. So what was that first opportunity right off of?
Right off, it was working in finance and doing portfolio management. And
so you learn a little more about money management.
Money management. And when I was playing, I worked in the off seasons for this portfolio manager, and it was amazing, right? Because it allowed me to have a ton of balance. I could listen to analysts, right, in the cold tub or wherever, my drive in, and it was just enough. And it was really had a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
But it wasn't team. But I wasn't missing team, right? And it was just something feeling. It was intellectually stimulating. And when I jumped out, I realized this is boring. And that was for me. This is me personally, right? And the portfolio manager I was working for is one of my closest family friends, investor in the business. But he made a life of it and loved it.
Can I ask you, where'd you go in the draft?
I was undrafted.
Undrafted, okay. So that's a thing. And, we're looking at someone like Brock Purdy, who's like Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah.
Basically last picked.
Yeah.
Now risen to the top. Give us an idea. What was your salary at in the NFL roughly? Give us a range.
Yeah, in my 4 years, it was between like $350 and $700.
Okay,
was my salary.
So it's decent money, but not like.
I made enough money to better myself.
You're not buying multiple Ferraris and
zero Ferraris.
Yeah.
But again, it's enough to invest in yourself and make some choices.
Yeah.
Right. And at a young age, I was right. Portfolio management, you can make a lot of money. It's a percentage of assets under management, and we managed a good number of assets. And the whole goal was for me to transition that business to me.
Unplug over here, plug in over here.
100%.
Yeah.
But to me, it wasn't fulfilling. There was no team. It was a wake up, you do the kind of the same thing. It was a lone wolf job, and you weren't building anything special, right?
Yeah.
And it was like playing in the fringes. And I feel like I was called to do more. And this immense sense of responsibility and duty and stress that I've loved, that you find to love in really elite sports, like that's I found was just like not replaceable. And the only thing I've found it to be replaceable is as a founder, as a CEO, like everything boils up. Decisions matter, and you make bad decisions, you make good decisions. But I have this saying, like, the ball always gets snapped. Right? That happens in football and happens in business. You got to make a decision. You got to play the game. You got to play the play. And you're going to fail, and you're going to win, and you're going to give up a sack. But you got to go put your hand back down. Yeah. And until that game is over, until the whistle is blown, it doesn't matter. And you don't control. Like, you got to put your hand on the ground. And people, that to me is one of the most fun things that we do as an entrepreneur. Is like, I can put my hand down multiple times a day and get to play that game.
Yeah, that's super relatable. When I started my production company, in 2008, heading into the Great Recession. I got real comfortable with being uncomfortable quickly.
Yeah.
Because, I think adversity works two ways. It can either kick your ass
Yeah.
or it makes you stronger, right?
Yeah.
That's a Nietzsche thing, right? Like, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And, you get a chance to be in every single down. And again, it can make you stronger, or you could stay on the ground and not get up. But yeah, it's a choice, but you become conditioned to do that.
Yeah.
Where did you go from there?
Yeah. Really what I learned in finance, that I was sitting on the wrong side of the table. I ended up being in front of a bunch of entrepreneurs, and what I gravitated towards was that side. And so I ended up joining early stage biotech, which is what ultimately Momentous came out of, and where I met my co-founder, Erica Good. Her and I have been equal partners since day one. We have an incredible relationship. And when you think about, we've been working together now for 7 years, a little over 7 years, and we've worked together at Momentous for 5. And we have these two roles. I'm the visionary, she's the integrator. So the day-to-day of the business, and the really strategic planning, and how do we think about putting processes in place and scalable process, that's her role. Yeah. And then for me, it's the visionary, connecting the big dots. When we think about product, science, sales, and those opportunities, those have all rolled to me. And it's been a really great partnership. And anyways, so I transitioned to this early stage biotech where Erica was one of the first employees and I was employee 5. And they were doing some really interesting things in the medical space. And one of the reasons why I joined was A, to help raise some capital, but B, they also thought, what if we could use this technology outside of medicine and use it in sport? Or in high performance.
Is this the PR lotion?
This is PR lotion.
Yeah.
And PR lotion started as this passion project within this biotech, and I gravitated towards it and kept gravitating towards it as we had some early data, but we had really great adoption. We were in some really unique places with Tour de France teams and Super Bowl champs and the Department of Defense.
But this is in your wheelhouse. I mean, it's like performance meets science, medicine, science-backed.
It was really interesting, though, because I didn't think I would end up back in the sports space. And I actually don't think we're in the sports. Like, we've evolved past sports. And that was just part of, I was so deep in sports that I had this very narrow view of sports. But one of the things I saw when I left the NFL was there's this huge gap. Like, as a elite athlete, you have access to practitioners, whether it be a strength coach, right, athletic trainer, med staff, all these people, dietitian, performance scientists that help get you, that help craft plans for you. And then you have access to the smartest minds in the world that are doing cutting edge things. And then you get the best products. When I left, it was like, where do you go?
Yeah.
And it ended up being one of these things like, well, you ask your buddy or you Google it, both equally dangerous. And really, I was in this black hole of what do I do and why? I know what I'm really passionate about and what I care about, but I'm struggling to find. I'm trying to find it. And part of that was what I saw in PR Lotion was there's all these really cool technologies and innovations that were happening in pro and college sports, but I couldn't find them. I couldn't figure out how to vet them as a consumer.
But what year was this?
This 2016. Okay.
So not that long ago.
Not that long ago, yeah. Eric and I worked at the biotech from 15 to 18, and we founded AMP HP, which is the underlying entity behind Momentous, in June of 2018. And we were venture back. We went out and raised money. We spun this technology out of the biotech. And this is where I kind of say we pivoted. We started as a biotech company, right? A spinoff as a biotech, but we weren't a consumer company, and we really weren't a supplement company. We were actually very hesitant to go into the supplement sports nutrition space, as it's a really crowded, messy, misunderstood space.
Well, it seems like you had one SKU.
Yeah, we had one SKU.
Not a company yet. You had a product.
Yeah, we had a product, but we had this vision of how do we create the next generation high performance company. And what we saw with PR Lotion, we were in the room and we were in conversations that very few people got. And we were at the very, very pinnacle, the tip of the pointy spear when it comes to performance and in the conversations. And so what that allows us to do was create this incredible advisory board around us.
How did you get into those rooms? Just
Some of it was relationship based. Some of it was our science and just our like genuine approach to, hey, we're doing something special. And what I realized as an elite athlete, you just have access to a lot of people. And what I did was start building relationships when I was an athlete.
Okay, I want to drill down a little bit on this. So I agree with you. Like, they say your network is your net worth, right?
Yeah.
Or, however they say it, whatever. So what types of things were you doing to reach out? Were you like emailing people? Were you calling people? Were you like, how did you build that? After the NFL, you have friends, on speed dial, whatever. But it's like, how did you network? Did you go to events, conferences, or what did you do?
Yeah, it was phone calling and asking people, like, to say, hey, who else should I be talking to?
So like cold call or getting introductions?
Yeah, I would say it was started with the people I knew, right?
Yeah.
And I built a lot of those relationships as my time in the NFL,
of course,
right? Or in collegiate sports.
Okay, start with your base.
You start with the base, and then you got to ask your base the hard question of, hey, who else should I be talking to? No, seriously, who else? Right? Can you connect me?
Yeah.
Please? And like this constant chase of asking and not being afraid to ask. And I think, anyways, I don't know. I think there's this hesitation of like, well, I don't want to be that person or ask that person. And what I found is actually people are very willing to help in this.
Steve Jobs said that. He said that was like what he credits a lot of his success to is he just would call, back in the day, telephone is all there was. So he would pick up the phone. I think he said he was like 12 years old and he called Michael Dell and asked him if he could have some computer parts or something.
Yeah.
And Michael Dell was like, sure, no problem. And like, so he just like would just put himself out there sort of unabashedly. And I was just curious, like, how you felt. Like, did you feel like it was quid pro quo, like if you do this for me, I do that for you? Or
no, I actually don't. I always I have like this pass it forward type thing. Like a couple of people help me, so now I'll make connections to everybody. But I think the other thing that was really important was this genuine approach of like, hey, I'm not the scientist. I don't know everything. Right. And here's what we know and here's what we don't know. Can you help us?
You're on a mission to research and development.
And I think that approach where when we got into these circles within elite sports or academia or in the military, that what really resonated with these people was it was commercial but genuine, right? And yes, we have a product. Yes, we don't have all the answers. Yes, we need to sell something, but can you help us answer some questions? What do you need answered? Like we had on PR lotion, we had 2 studies published this year, and one of them we started before COVID, and we had one of the top performance scientists at one of the top NFL teams. I remember sitting in his office in 2019, or maybe, it was 2019, late 2019. He's like, you're not going to do this research. I've had many people sit in this office and say, oh, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. He's like, companies don't invest in this stuff. That's not what you guys do. He's like, why would you? And I said, no, we are. Like, we're committed to answering the questions. And when we delivered that data this year, he looked at me and said, I can't believe you actually did it. Right? And he's like, that is so impactful for me. And now he's become a huge champion of our business. Right? And he doesn't even use all of our products. He's just like, they stand for something that's different. And I think taking that approach and really thinking about your why when you're asking these and being genuine, yes, you have an ask, you have something out, but you also have to be receptive and open and all of those things.
Yeah, it seems like the other commonality, one, you had audacious goals, and so maybe that was impressive, even to people who weren't particularly interested in the product per se. But then the other commonality seems to be like you were talking to and asking introductions and favors from people who possibly had skin in the game. It's like, hey, this could level up your performance, whatever you're doing, whether you're casually cycling on the weekends or hiking or skiing. Like, this is going to benefit you too.
Yeah.
And then they were incentivized to help, probably.
Yeah. No, for sure. To really build anything special, you have to have some mission and some audacious goal.
Yeah.
And you got to connect that to other people.
Yeah.
And if you can find a way to draw high performance life optimization into you or whomever, you can create that personal connection. But if it's like, hey, I need you to investigate PR lotion, or hey, I need you to buy PR lotion, that's transactional.
Exactly.
Right? And that transaction, there's a time and place for that. But if you can't build some rapport, then you're never going to be able to build an ecosystem.
Yeah, and I'm digging into this networking thing because I think about it every single day
Yeah.
how important building relationships is. And sometimes I have to remind myself, like, hey, you can't get complacent with your relationships. If you haven't talked to someone, you know, in a month or 3 months or 6 months, you got to keep those relationships warm, because you never know when you're going to need someone's help, or that person's the right person that you can help. And so I just think this networking is sort of an ugly word, but it's, if you say it like building relationships or keeping relationships strong, it's so critical, I think, for anything you're doing now and in the future. It's just, you know, building that foundation.
Yeah, it's very well said.
Okay, so then take us to the point where the two came together.
Yeah, so I'd say we've had some really interesting dynamics. And this is where it's always pivot. What's the plan B, right? Plan A is the A. What's the tactics we're going on to? And so we, in about 2 years ago, so in July of 2021, we acquired the Momentous brand.
Yeah.
And we merged the two businesses together. Obviously, we are Momentous, and we're doing business as Momentous. But that was a huge move for us as a business. And what I think COVID taught us, and what we realized was, hey, we're not a biotech company, right? We're a consumer company. And we had one really great product. It was nichier than we ever thought it was, right? We thought, you know, these grand ambitions. It's an incredible product, and it's a hero product, not from a revenue perspective, but from a story, right? Funded by the Department of Defense, clinical research, doing something that's never been done before, all those things, but it's not for everyday use. And I said this earlier, like, we had talked about nutrition and supplements as a natural path to expand on, and we were just like, I don't know, we don't know, we just weren't sure, and it didn't feel very authentic. And why? Because the space is so crowded and so messy. But we started to go down that path, and my biggest fear was, we're working with 100 pro and college sports teams, we're working with the federal government, we have these great connections to the Department of Defense, but if we just launch another protein, it's like, what? That's not special. That's not authentic to who we are as a business. Mm-hmm. And so I think what's really, really important that I realized was, we need to be working with these people that have brands they already trust. And so as we started to get dug in, we kept running into Momentous, and I knew a couple of people Momentous already, and they were looking for a shift. But Momentous had a handful of SKUs, mostly centered around protein and really sports nutrition. But they were built in pro and college sports. They didn't have a great, they weren't really big in the consumer space, but they were trusted in pro and college sports. And for me, that felt very genuine and authentic to say, all right, now we can go fast into this. It's not Amp Human, Amp HP pivoted to supplements. It's, no, we merged with a best-in-class nutrition supplement company that was built in pro and college sports, that was built with science. That's very similar to our mission. And so we did that. We brought them two together. Merging two businesses was infinitely harder than I could ever imagine, and made a ton of mistakes along the way. But what that merger has allowed us to do is it allowed us to take what made us super special, our ecosystem, our science, our dedication for democratizing high performance, and shifted it and put us into the stratosphere, right? It allowed us to leverage our partnerships in a different way, allowed us to talk about optimization and wellness, and get out of the niche sports high performance world and say, no, we can actually democratize high performance.
So a lot of people don't know that one of the first people involved with Momentous before you is Rob Dyrdek.
Yep.
I sat down with Rob. I love Rob. We had this long conversation, and then I found out that he was attached to Momentous. I had no idea the backstory. But not a dig on Rob at all. He's one of the greatest humans ever. But he was not able to get this brand up and running on the direct-to-consumer side. Maybe they had relationships with pro sports. Maybe things were going well. But like, they were not able to get this brand off and running. Weigh in on that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of right place, right time.
Yeah.
And the supplement nutrition space is really hard.
Well, let me zoom out too. And I ask this with context because Imagine that we're now talking to anyone who's starting a new product or service that is, they have a top quality product or service, but it's not getting traction.
Yeah.
Right. And so like what I'm getting at is like, how do you start to figure out how to dial in what you guys have got going now? I have an idea what you're going to say, but like, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, maybe in the context of giving advice, because now you have this hindsight, right?
Yeah. It's a really good question. I think realistically, when you think about how do you turn the dials and the levers, and one of the things, like for me as an entrepreneur, is I was always taking shots.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that I loved.
Yeah.
But I always was taking shots with like this long-term vision of like, hey, where do we go? And I would say the thing that I kept, and I would say what made the Momentous flywheel, it was at this core of, we are going to be leaders in high performance. Yeah. Right. And it was doing all this really hard stuff, not doing branding right, not having the best website. It was, how do we build an ecosystem in high performance unlike anybody else? And it was this approach of like, let's be the anti-supplement company. Let's do things that most companies in our space don't do. Be genuine, be authentic, and bring people in that really have never attached, that are leaders in this space. And so I would say my approach was very different of like, let's not take a playbook that's been there. Let's take a different approach on it. And Eric and I really aligned of like, let's be leaders in high performance first and foremost. And that meant we invested in things that most people would never invest in, right? Yeah. Which is science, which is clinical research, which is thought leadership. And that was a hard decision, but it was like, how do we keep doing this? And what all of a sudden started happening is this flywheel started picking up steam, and we started getting more and more leaders, and the ecosystems we're in brought trust. And then the next thing you know, you start getting these thought leaders like Stacy Sims, Dr. Stacy Sims, Dr. Huberman, Dr. Andy Galpin, and right, all these people that started spinning off. That's like, they're doing something special. I want involved.
Yeah.
And then you went from really hardcore scientists and in secret rooms in the government to big names, right? Or tastemakers in the space, not saying this is the people I want. And that just spiraled off into commercial success. And that flywheel and that commitment to being leaders in high performance was really, really important.
Yeah, I'm glad that you underscored that, because that was noticeable. And now if I'm going to sort of summarize and paraphrase what I heard Rob tell me about the story, I mean, he started down a path of, even picking the name, it's this sort of audacious, big, in Rob Dyrdek fashion. I can imagine him jumping a car, over something exploding, swimming with sharks.
Yeah.
That was the original vision, and he threw, everything at it. Money, promotion, all that he had, and it didn't go to the degree that it has gone now. And so you had this task to basically completely rewrite the script, rebrand, and you went this direction of science, human performance, all the things that it wasn't, the anti-supplement brand. And then you found this flywheel, able to leverage the expertise and the influence of some of these top tastemakers, like the Hubermans and whatnot.
Yeah, I think, right, like what Matt Wan, who was the founder of the Momentous brand, and Rob Dyrdek did, I don't think I could have done, right? Yeah. From like starting they really started a protein business, right? Got really early success in pro and college sports and got it there. How they design product and the quality of product, right, set us up to have so much success.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have started a nutrition brand like they did and got it to where they did, because I have a very different approach. They needed that, right? What it was and what we saw was, this is an incredible building opportunity for us. And how do you leverage a biotech-ish company and a nutrition company that's working with the best, that like still trying to figure out, smash them together, and it's like, boom, now you have a next generation high performance company.
It's so interesting to me, and I think there's lessons to be extracted here, right? From those who are now in the trenches. It's like they did start with an extremely high quality product, and yet it didn't go to the degree it was supposed to go, right? So it's like, you think you have an amazing product market fit is perfect, and yet it doesn't go. So you had to write totally, throw out the old playbook, write a new playbook, because those plays were not working for whatever reason.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, that's what's really like, having a really high quality product is actually like just table stakes to build the business now.
It's what people expect.
It's what people expect.
It's the minimum.
It's the minimum. And then like you can go hire a brand agency and build a sexy brand, right? The how do you connect with people, right? And how do you validate that product and create a community and a sense of hype or desire around that is really important. And still for us as a business and where we're going is, how do we tell better stories about our products? Because people I still feel like our mission is to get people in the right products at the right time to democratize high performance. And we're in the first inning of a 9-inning game here. And
we really are. I mean, this thing, according to my clock, just started like 2020 when Huberman goes on Joe Rogan and starts talking about supplementation, and I start leaning in as someone who's trying to figure out my own health. And here we are, like just barely 3 years later, maybe, we're so early. So let me ask it now. We sort of know what the brand started as in the beginning, but it's totally changed. So this series is called Behind the Brand. We talk about brands. How would you now describe the Momentous brand?
That's a really good question. I mean, how I describe the Momentous brand is leaders in high performance, right? We are the anti-supplement company. What we're trying to do is, I think, combine what is out there, which is we have these really high quality supplement brands, right? That make great quality products, but they're pretty sterile, almost pharmaceutical. But people don't have an emotional connection with them. And historically, it's like, here's 300 products, figure it out, right? Figure out what's right for you. And then you have what I'll call bro science, right? Which is just, right, colors, flash, bang, right? Like, we could start that in our garage tomorrow, and if you had good flavors and whatever, you could do good. What I'm trying to do is but people relate to this. Like, that's community. Like, they're like, oh, I want to be like that. What I think we can do is we can create this brand in the middle who's your partner. Highest quality products, somebody you want to wear a t-shirt and say like, no, Momentous helps me, right? Momentous is my guide. And that's really what we are as a brand. And I think we have so much story to tell about how we're different in this space and how we're trying to really recreate this space, because product quality, like consumers, I don't think understand that in supplement land, what's on the label doesn't mean it needs to be in the bottle or in the bag. And just because you say you're third-party certified, that could mean you're third-party certified not to have rats in your facility. And pro and college sports have figured out how to do this, right? There are two really certification processes they follow, but it's the Wild West. Like, you could, right? This would be like if you bought a Beyond Meat burger and it had bacon in it. As a consumer, you'd be pissed. Yeah. Actually, not just pissed, you'd probably make a lot of money suing them. In the supplement space, you could have, a vegan product and say it's vegan, and you could test it and it could not. Like the label claim accuracy and all of that doesn't exist. And so I think we have this huge opportunity to, de-charlatanize, right? Because we're in an industry of charlatans. How do we bring, hey, this is what we know about our product, this is what we don't know, this is what quality stands for, this is what bad quality, and really bring to light what some of that is. Because I don't think consumers desire transparency, and why our space is so hard and so confusing is it's a Wild West still.
Yeah, I think speaking as a consumer, I want transparency, but I also want efficacy.
Yeah,
like I want it to work.
Yeah,
like if I'm taking creatine, like I'm taking creatine now, or if I'm taking a vitamin E or a vitamin D or magnesium or sodium, potassium, like I want to see the results. I don't want to just think that I'm ingesting it and then it's, it's going out without purpose.
Yeah, I think that's where this education. So we go back to like our mission to democratize high performance. You do that through knowledge, you do that through education, you do that through products, right? And what we are called to do is how do we create this really rich educational flow and reminding somebody like you of like, this is what creatine does and why it's so impactful, and relate it back to your why. And I think if we go to like what is so important in the consumer is like getting people in the right products for them is critically important, right? So I have my own hierarchy of like, what's the most important for me, right? And then I understand the science behind it, right? And I kind of rack and stack, because even though we have all these products, I can't take them all, right? And nor should I, right? Because there's diminishing returns. What are the most important things for me based upon what I care about?
Yeah.
And I think all of us as consumers need to do that, but we as consumers don't, because you go and you're like, man, I got this. Well, I don't even remember why I'm taking this. Right. And when we talk to customers, they're like, I can't remember why I'm doing this. And like anything in life optimization, whether it's working out, whether it's eating, whether it's sleeping, if you did it for 3 months, great. But we're talking about long-term habits in life, right? We're talking about how do you live longer? How do you optimize your life? And if you really want to make a change, you don't just work out for 3 months and not work out for 3 years. We got to create long-standing habits, right? Bone-crushing consistency is what creates change. But that means you can't do 100 things. That means you got to master a couple. And then you can add one, and then you can add one. Again, get people in the right products for them at the right time will create a bigger impact in their life, right? Rather than like sell you 10 products that you use for 3 months. I'd rather sell you 3 products that you use for 3 years, because you're actually gonna have a way bigger benefit of those 3 products using them consistently for a 3-year period.
Yeah, it's like doing a few sit-ups and expecting 6-pack abs.
Yeah.
You got to do it for a while
to
see results. So let me hit on that a little harder, which is, if I go to the Momentous site right now, how do I know what I should have? I think one of the gaps in the market for me is this gap between my doctor and all the information out there on the internet, with people saying all different kinds of things that contradict each other. Fortunately, there's people like Dr. Andrew Huberman and Dr. Peter Attia and Andy Galpin, all these guys that a lot of us have come to know and trust. But how do we know what stack is good for us?
That's a really good question. And that's what we're really building to the future of like, what do we become? We become that trusted guide, right? To say, Brian, let's help get you into the right places. Because that's ultimately what's really important. And that's not just as simple as, hey, select from this menu. I think we all have some idea of what our goals or our fears are. And it's, I think part of the consumer that we're getting from some of these experts in the space is people are really curious and they actually know what they care about. And so they're coming in. So what we've done as a business right now, we've broken, we kind of believe, okay, there's 4 core pillars to optimization. We got sleep, we've got athletic performance, we've got cognitive, and we got foundational. And foundational is a bit of a catch-all, but like hormone health, immune health, things like that fit in foundational. But ultimately, you look at those things and say, okay, what are the most important? Where are the biggest gaps in my life? And what I would tell any consumer is pick those out, right? Figure out what you believe can have the biggest impact. Start with that, right? And that's how we've designed it, and you can go find it.
So let's use me as a guinea pig, okay? I've hacked a lot of this. I've done a lot of research, so I have answers in my head, but you can tell me as if we're doing like a little role play here. So let's assume, because this was very much first step in my journey, I figured out that my sleep was terrible. I didn't even know it, but when I hit a certain age, I was waking up feeling like I got hit by a truck. And I did nothing. Waking up sore, my body felt inflamed. Come to find out, I go to all the doctors. Started with neurologist, cardiologist, pulmonary doctor. Did all this tests to see if I was dying. It turns out I had like mild sleep apnea. I had no idea. I could maybe lose a couple pounds, but I always thought sleep apnea was people who were
overweight,
really
obese.
Overweight. Turns out, like, because of my age, my jaw relaxes certain way, and my tongue kind of fell back, and I was waking up about 25 times a night, but not even knowing it.
Yeah.
And so I changed a lot about my sleep habits, and all that. But so let's assume, and I got it dialed in.
Yeah.
So let's assume that I'm focused on sleep. What can I get right now in terms of supplements? What should I be doing to improve?
Yeah. I think, right, first off, to say everything starts with sleep.
It does.
Near-term performance and long-term health and wellness.
Cosign.
Sleep.
Yeah.
So
it wasn't nutrition and it wasn't exercise.
It's not.
It was sleep.
Sleep. If you get sleep right, everything will also have
100% cosign.
So what we want to do as a company is we want to champion that, like you care about cognitive longevity, let's talk about sleep. You care about athletic performance, let's talk about sleep.
Yeah.
Like, let's take it back to sleep.
And by the way, sleeping pills are the worst thing for you. Like all of those prescription, that's not a solution.
So I think what's super interesting is there's, right, when you think about, melatonin, right? Now, melatonin is a hormone, right? And
we make it naturally.
We make it naturally.
Yeah.
And when we start supplementing heavily with melatonin, it's not good for us, right? That's not the goal. And so, I think you think about behaviors. What are the behaviors you can do? And a lot of these things are now talked about, like go see morning sunlight, right? Stop using your screen in bed. Right. Those types of behaviors are so important.
The protocols,
right? Because it starts with behaviors, right? And then really what we focused on is what are the natural things that you can do that can help, right? Downregulate your system, that can increase the quality of sleep, right? And potentially prolong that sleep. And that's where we've worked with some of our experts. And right, we have a sleep stack and a sleep pack, right, that contains magnesium, right, L-theanine and apigenin, and you can throw inositol in there to help blood sugar, et cetera. But really, right, magnesium, and we use a magnesium threonate, which is the most effective at crossing the blood-brain barrier, which is really important when you sleep. So how do we increase the quality of sleep, also restfulness, et cetera, stay asleep, right? L-theanine and apigenin are all about downregulate. L-theanine is from tea, right? And can help you downregulate and
it's the same ingredient in chamomile, right?
That's apigenin.
Oh, apigenin, okay.
Right, and apigenin comes from grapefruit and chamomile, and exactly, right? But also, how do you think about downregulating and relaxing, right? Natural ways. And then we also have a product called Elite Sleep that we actually designed with some of the top practitioners in pro sports. And Elite Sleep actually has melatonin in it, but it wasn't designed to be used nightly. It was designed to be used when you're traveling multiple time zones, when you need to reset your clock or you need to prioritize sleep. So think about it, right? If you were a pro baseball player, right? You just played, whatever in Boston, and now you're playing in San Diego the next day, and you're all out of whack, and you need to reset your sleep clock, right? And so Elite Sleep was designed for those moments when you need to prioritize sleep, in situations where you got to reset your clock, which is a very different, than natural sleep.
Okay, love it.
Well, let me ask you some questions.
Yeah, do.
When you think about your because I think it all starts around goals and fears. When fast forward 30 years, what are you most fearful for, or what are your goals, right? When you're in your 70s, your 80s, what do you want your life to look like?
Yeah, I will answer that question and say, I want to be active. I want to enjoy my kids. I want to do all the things that I'm doing now, but maybe, less rigorously. I still ski and snowboard. I play tennis, play pickup basketball. I do jujitsu with my son, who's 15. I want to do all those things, but maybe, when I'm 60, 70, 80, I just want to do it, less violently. But the reason I'm not thinking that far in advance right now is because it's like, I have a much more urgent need, and that is, I got to wake up every day and go to work. I got to be, I have to have a great attitude as a dad. I want to be present with my family. And if I'm waking up feeling like trash, it's not happening. I'm not optimizing my own performance, right? Either on the relationship level or my work level. So it's like, this thing is like right in front of my face.
Yeah.
Like, this is the fire that's got to be put out first. Let's worry about getting to 80 later.
Exactly.
I got right now.
Exactly.
This is punching me right in the face.
Yeah. No, I think that's the balance, right? But performing today also can help you perform tomorrow.
100%.
Right? And what we have to understand is those takeaways on there. And so I always go like, anyways, like I just asked that question because some people are very long-term oriented. So like I go like, I obviously very, very much care about my performance today. And I think about what I care most about though is my cognitive longevity.
Yeah.
Right. But that has to do with my background. Right, like I hit my head for a living, right? I have dementia, Alzheimer's in my family, and that scares me, right? I know I had traumatic brain injury a lot of times, and so I think about what are the things that I can do every day to help prolong or help increase my cognitive longevity, right? Starts with sleep, right? But then there are some other things that are really important to do, right? In there, and so I go back to like that's my number one, right? Is cognitive longevity, and it's just. Sleep is the number one thing that you can do for cognitive longevity. We know that, right? And so that plays nicely into like it all starts with sleep. In there, and then everything trickles down below that.
Okay, so assuming we get sleep on track and we're getting good sleep, and I can tell you it changed my world. Once I got that dialed in, then I could really focus on strength training. That's what I did next. So talk to me about strength training. So. Again, at a certain age, I really wanted to get stronger because I realized, okay, I'm slowly losing muscle mass. I want to get my mojo back. I want to feel strong. And so I started strength training, started lifting heavier. What type of supplementation can I do for that?
Yeah, I think, right, what's most important, right? The most important macronutrient when we think about strength training is protein, right? And most people don't get enough protein, especially if you're strength training. And
I struggle, every single day.
Because it's a pound or even it's a gram per pound is really what or a gram, 1.2 grams per pound, which is a lot of protein when you think about it in there. And yes, we should get most of the protein from whole foods, et cetera, but that's also not. And so like it all kind of starts with protein, in my opinion, when you think about if you're weight training or training at all, like protein is an essential building block, the macronutrient that is the most important. And it's really easy to supplement it with high quality whey protein in there, right? Putting your smoothies, shakes.
It is difficult to eat 100 grams of ground turkey or ground beef. It's like, it's more than you think. It's like, wow, I got to eat all that? Yes. That's just to get you, that's just your daily allowance just to get, and maybe it's like a, 152, whatever your weight is. If I'm probably 178, 180 pounds, that's 180 grams of meat. I've got
it's a lot
every day.
And that's where it's right. Like really, really easy, natural way to do that is supplementation, right? Because you can do it easily in a drink format, in a smoothie format, and get great nutrients. I would say the other thing when you strength train is and as you age is your connective tissue health. And so, your joints, ligaments, tendons. And so if you think about proteins for your muscles, right, collagen is for everything else other than muscle. So if you think about your calf, right, your calf muscle is fed by protein, right? Your Achilles is fed by collagen. Right. And we, different type of amino acid profile. So, collagen is a protein, it's a peptide, right, which just basically means it's multiple amino acids put together in a certain strand. And collagen has really interesting data coming around its connective tissue health and benefits for connective tissue health. And so that's one of the things, like I would say, as you age, as you continue to strength train, like our collagen, our ability to synthesize collagen in our body goes down. And the way we eat, we actually don't consume very much collagen.
So that's a key supplement. And
a key as you age, right?
Well, I'm just thinking about Aaron Rodgers, who just blew out his Achilles, right?
Right. That's 100% it. Like I would bet a lot of money that in his pre-surgery and post-surgery and rehab, he will be on high doses of collagen. And collagen is one of the top selling products in pro and college sports for us now because they're using it as a preventative care. I was like, this is really important. We know, right? Protein feeds the muscle, collagen feeds the tendons, ligaments, et cetera. And
I didn't even think about that until you just mentioned it.
It's really quite fascinating. And the research is coming out And because collagen was made really in the beauty industry, right? But connective tissue health,
Yeah, you think about skin and
skin, hair, nails,
Yeah.
skin, hair, nails, it's the same stuff your collagen and your connective tissue is made of.
Is that product, infused into your protein stuff, or is it separate?
It's a separate product. So
Okay.
we have actually 2 collagens. One of them was awarded a government innovation contract. It's our collagen shot. So basically it's a novel formula to take collagen on the go. And so we've learned a couple things. Society have learned a couple things about collagen. First off, it needs to have vitamin C in it. And vitamin C helps availability and the synthesis in the body. Really, really important. And number 2 is that caffeine can inhibit collagen. And most people take collagen with their inhibit.
Oh, interesting.
Right. But this is new data. This is not like we haven't known this for decades.
Yeah.
Right. The collagen research is evolving and coming out. And so,
how much collagen should I take? For example, do I take it daily?
You take it daily. So it's like 10 to 20 grams of
Okay.
collagen. Really, probably 15 is a sweet spot. But how we think about I'd say the best time to take collagen is pre-workout.
Pre-workout, okay.
Right? Because you want to have the collagen available when you're training, right? And also when you think about your connective tissue, your joints, ligaments, tendons, they don't get a ton of blood flow or a ton of nutrients when we're just sitting around.
Yeah.
They're actually pretty nutrient starved. And so what you need to do is you need to be under load or working out or training, walking, and it helps deliver that collagen.
Yeah, like activate it.
Activate it, exactly. So you take it ideally 60 minutes before, but you could take it 30 to 60, and you're not supposed to take it with caffeine. It's like, right, if I would say, what's best? Don't take it with caffeine, take it 60 minutes before you work out. Mm-hmm. If I'd say, okay, what's second best? Take it before you work out and maybe with caffeine. What's the third best? Just take it any time of day, right? With caffeine, right? Because it's better, you get some benefit with it all. Anyways, so.
How about protein? Are you taking that pre-workout or are you taking it post-workout?
Yeah, there's new research coming out that the timing of protein actually doesn't matter as much. It's more so, are you getting your daily allotment macro? And so really for me, like I drink protein after I train.
Yeah, I can't take anything before I train really.
Yeah.
It's better for me to fast, maybe have that collagen and maybe the creatine with electrolyte drink or something.
Exactly. So, but I mean, everybody trains at different times and et cetera, and it matters. But so for me, I always try to get protein in post workout, and then you just, I typically try, like I weigh 240 pounds. Like I have a high protein content need. And so I would get something in throughout the day, but really the new data is showing that timing is not as important, rather than you need to be making sure you hit your macro allotment. And it just, by nature of like, you're not going to be able, like, you don't want to sit down and have a 60 gram protein meal. All right. Like that's terrible.
Yeah.
So you want to just spread it out. And that's why, some sort of powdered protein or bar is a real easy way to snack.
Yeah, it doesn't weigh you down. You can actually function during the day.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you'll just take a nap and peace out.
100%. Anyway, I would say you keep mentioning creatine. I'm just interested, like, why do you take creatine?
So my understanding, and I think I heard this from Dr. Huberman, is that, again, as we age, the body makes creatine naturally.
Yep.
But then as we age, it makes it less frequently, or maybe not enough. So I supplement, and I'm taking about 5 grams a day.
Yep.
And I also heard that it doesn't matter when you take the creatine, as long as you're sort of consistent and you're stacking it. It doesn't have to be pre-workout per se, but just, you take it consistently about the same time. That's the dose that I'm taking. So, and I'm taking it for sort of strengthening my muscles. I didn't feel like it doesn't give me a pump, right? It's not, it doesn't feel like that's what it's for. By comparison, a little caffeine does give me a pump, and I get my caffeine lately by this drink called Unimate.
Okay.
Which is like a South American messy drinks. They brought like tons of it to the World Cup, and that's got like, it's not, because I don't love coffee. It just makes me poop immediately. And so, I like the taste just fine.
Who doesn't like a good poop though?
It's true, but
Yeah.
like when you're at the gym, it's sort of
Yeah.
problematic. So I'll always do it afterwards if that's good. I'll have a nice iced coffee, like
Yeah.
maybe at 2 or 3 o'clock to get me through
Yeah.
the day. But Unimate in the morning is what I like to drink, or an electrolyte drink
Yeah.
called Element.
Yep.
By my buddy Rob Wolf.
Yeah. Amazing product.
Love it. And I'll mix the creatine into there, and it seems to give me the right stack.
So what's really interesting, so you're using creatine, you're thinking about it from a muscle perspective. So creatine, if you were to ask every one of the experts that we work with, from neurosurgeons to exercise physiologists, creatine and omega-3s would be the two things they say every human being should be on. And not creatine for muscle mass, creatine for brain health.
Really?
For
Okay.
cognitive performance, both short and long term. So creatine is just a basic amino acid, but it's one of the key building blocks and one of the key sources of energy in our brain. Our brain uses creatine very, very readily, and so that microdose of creatine is really, really important for your brain health. And for me, creatine is one of the most important things I do every day. And I don't care about muscle gain, muscle growth, none of that. I'm taking creatine solely for cognitive longevity and performance. There's now like 20,000 clinical papers on creatine and brain health around traumatic brain injury, around neuroprotective, right? When you think about, like our pro and college teams are giving creatine to their athletes, not for muscle growth anymore, to be neuroprotective.
Yeah. Or
right?
neuroplasticity, right?
Neuroplasticity, yeah. So when your brain, right, when you have a traumatic event, your brain kind of, shuts down. And if you have more creatine, it has more energy availability. Anyway, so creatine for brain health is really, really important, and it's really misunderstood. Creatine is like the most misunderstood supplement out there. Because when you think of creatine, you think of like big muscle-bound bodybuilders, et cetera. And that is true. Creatine is really important in our muscles, but those are really large doses of creatine.
Yeah.
Another really cool
Do
thing.
you think I'm taking the right amount?
5 grams, 100% microdose.
Yeah.
Super small,
Yeah.
right? Not going to get you bulky, not going to make you retain a bunch of water, but really important to top off your creatine stores so that your brain has it, your muscles has it, et cetera. Creatine also is one of those things, it's a commodity almost. It's very, very cheap and very inexpensive.
Yeah.
And so creatine monohydrate is technically the gold standard in the space. And basically, when you're buying a creatine, you just want it to be pure creatine monohydrate.
Yeah.
And there's not a bunch of difference in it. And honestly, there's not a ton of manufacturers of it either. But what you want to look for is a really clean creatine. And creatine is not expensive. Like we're talking, I think ours is, call it $36 for a 90-day supply. So 33 cents a day or whatever, whatever that meant, more than that, 36 cents a day. No, my math is wrong. Yeah, close to that.
Yeah.
Right. Which is
worth it.
Which is nothing.
Yeah.
When you think about that is like a core building block, brain, muscle, et cetera. And if you talk to all of our experts, every expert says creatine, omegas.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas creatine is very commodity driven, omegas are not. The difference in omega quality is astronomical in the market.
Yeah, yeah. I like that about the Momentous product. I feel like I can trust the quality. Let's talk about the omega, like when you should take it. So I've heard that you should take the vitamin D supplement and the omegas with food, because that's how it sort of attaches, or that's how it's most effective. Is that true?
I would say vitamin D you always want to take with fats, right? For sure. And so combining vitamin D and omegas is actually a good idea, because omegas are obviously fat. But yes, vitamin D needs to be taken with some sort of fat substance to increase absorption, bioavailability, et cetera. Omegas you can take with a meal or not. I don't think it's as relevant as a vitamin D.
Okay.
But the challenge with omegas is making sure you get enough, right? And DHA and EPA are the two biggest omega-3s that are really beneficial to supplement. Like our brain is made up of 40% fat. And of that, most of it is DHA, right? And so supplementing it is really, really important. The challenge is most people don't understand what's the difference or what's the right or effective dose. And that's a really hard one, and the category is really messy, in my opinion, because you can go buy at a big box store, you can go buy 120 pills for $12. Right? But the challenge is it's a gram of fish oil, but it's only 100 milligrams of omega-3s, right? Which basically we know do nothing. right? Because we're talking about, of those omega-3s, of the DHA and EPA, like you need to have like 1.5 grams of them combined, right? Which is a lot.
Yeah.
And where you source these things come from matters too, right? Because fish in general contain high levels of heavy metals, right? As you go up. And so you want to really think about what type of fish is it coming from? Because of course, I don't know, for me, like, let's not, if I'm trying to supplement to increase health, let's not supplement and potentially decrease health.
It matters.
And so, I mean, there's some really great companies out there. We're obviously very proud of our omega. And it's, you know, something that I would consider like top of the class. But there are other great ones out there. And so I'd say, like, if every human, you know, like we all said, let's take omega-3s and creatine, we would be a better, more healthy. And those really have to do with brain health, right? More holistically. And when we think about us, right? Our bodies are going to fall apart and all of that. But guess what? We know how to fix that now, right? And if we're one of the unlucky ones that have, like, gets an incurable cancer, or catches it too late, or has some type of genetic heart disease, right? We may go out that way, but likely over the next 40 years, this is what's going to fail us.
Right.
They're going to be able to fix all of this, right? Whether it be, right, lab-grown organs or whatever. I don't know where it will
3D
go.
printing.
3D printed organs. Scary to think about, but it's probably real.
You never know.
What the challenge will be is our brain, right? And so I think realistically, and our diets have changed very differently, but we also understand what the brain needs and doesn't need. And like, that's why sleep is so important, is because how our brain heals, stores memories, right? Increases blood flow is all during sleep, right? It's when our toxins flush out of our brains, right? And we rejuvenate. So anyways, really fascinating.
All right, so we covered sleep, strength training. We talked about cognitive health. We didn't talk too much about hormone health and other health, but I could sit here and talk to you probably for another 6 hours. Let's end on this. Talk to me about mindset. Let's go back to the Momentous brand, your perspective on the company, the brand, where you're headed. How important is mindset?
Our consumer is mindset driven. And so I think the big thing that we realized, and one of the big epiphanies that we had, is we're not a sports company. We're not an athlete company. We're a mindset driven company. Like, this is a mental state of people that we're attracting. It's the same culture that we've grown. Like, we are for people seeking to optimize their life, right? We're not for people trying to bench press 1,000 pounds or run a marathon. Those people are also optimizers. It's the next level up. And so when we took this approach of like, let's attack this from a mindset driven approach of like, how do we optimize? How do we get better? That was really, really core. And so when I go back and I think about like mindset in our business, we have 4 core values, and mindset falls into a bunch of them. So like, we have growth mindset, right, is one of them. And right, being open to coaching, always being curious, right? How do we get better? How do we continue to tweak and change and never being satisfied? And there's another one that I think that's really in there around mindset. This is like bias towards action, right? Of like, we have to take risks. We have to move and shake. And right, the ball always gets snapped. Better have a bias towards action, because the ball is like, everything else is moving around us. And if we choose not to move, then you take a step back, actually, right? It's a pretty impactful thing for me. And this other one that is really relevant is selflessness, right? Is like putting the greater good beyond. Like, how do we think about doing more in it? So mindset is very core to who we are. And what we want is a very cognizant mindset within our team. But also, we realized that the consumer is a mindset consumer. It is psychographic, not demographic. It's not sport. It is people that are continuously seeking to create progress in their life, right? That are continuously curious and on a mission. They might be on day 1, we found, of this mission, and we might be starting them with their journey. They might be on year 30, right? And they might have, right, did Atkins 25 years ago, and right, all these things, and they've just continued to evolve. And like, we meet people where they're at, but it is a mindset driven approach, not a physical or demographic, etc.
I mean, we were just sitting back, you know, chopping it up, reminiscing about the good old days and all that. tracking my roots, where I came from and where I'm going.